Victims of the war. A family decided to have their son's wedding on the ruins of Khartoum. As most of the city had been destroyed by the pointless fight between the official army and part of it which had a failed coup d'etat but decided to continue the fight. It is quite a complex situation, as that part of the military used to be somehow independent, or nearly so. It was established in 2013, and its leader reports to the head of the army. There were big negotiations between the two bodies before the war started. The aim was to absorb that part of the military into the official army and form one army. All that happened after the revolution, which took place in late 2018, until it succeeded and al-Bashir was forced to step down in April 2019. The sitting took place in front of the army headquarters in Khartoum. People from different parts of the Sudan had gathered there to the fall down of Omar al-Bashir. On the fall of al-Bashir's day, one of the generals announced that al-Bashir was no longer president, and he was the president. People revolted against him immediately and asked him to step down and shouted their slogans, which had been since day one of the revolution, which were freedom, peace, and justice. The second day, another general announced that the other general is no longer president, and he was the president. The political opposition at that time was mostly united and formed one strong opposition. They called for negotiations, which took place at Juba, the capital of southern Sudan. They came up with a constitutional document to govern the transitional period, which were decided to be 3 years. The first 18 months will be governed by the head of the military, as the president of the Supremacy Assembly, which was half civilians and half military, and the second 18 months to be governed by civilian rule. That was the plan, so the agreement was signed and all. They chose Dr. Abdullah Hamdok to be a prime minister. Over a year passed. Hamdok had his fingerprints despite the struggles he faced. A few months before the leadership in the Supremacy Assembly go to civilians, the head of the army made a coup d'etat. Then, months later, he decided that he wanted to hand over the ruling to civilians. Negotiations held between the military leaders and opposition, and there were a number of points. They passed most of the legislation successfully. Then the last part was the trigger. As the opposition suggested that the rapid force should fully integrate into the military within 5 years. The head of the military said it should be 2 years. On the other hand, the leader of the rapid force said it should be 10 years, which is a long time for a realistic plan for such a matter. The negotiations were taking place, and on the day of the agreement, the head of the army didn't appear. Not long days passed, and all of a sudden, the leader of the rapid force attacked the army headquarters and some other sensitive places, which was an attempt of a coup d'etat. But when it failed, the leader of the rapid force stupidly carried on, saying he is fighting for democracy. The city and other cities were destroyed. People displaced or migrated. Others died for the lack of essential medical services, and the war still on. No family in Sudan had not been affected by this tragedy. Friends of Sudan intervened in holding negotiations in Jeddah. The two sides decided to go back to come to a decision, but the fight was on. All the wounded soldiers from both sides and lost souls have families and loved ones, and the generals are hiding in safe places and don't care for all that. Every single day, people grieve for loved ones, not just from the two bodies, but also civilians. That family was planning to have their son's wedding on Eid Day, but 4 days before Eid, the fight broke out, so they postponed it. 4 months later, the fight was on till it came to a week that was quiet. They decided to hold the event during that week. Quickly planned for a simple ceremony, and the event took place. Some of the rapid force witnessed the event and fired their guns in the air. Till there, everything was fine. When the wedding was over and people started to leave and turn off the lights, a couple of shots were fired. One was in the foot of the groom relative, and the other was in the heart of his cousin who passed away. The tragedies of this war are a lot, and will be more if this war is not over. People of Sudan had their saying. They want pure civil rule, and they will fight for that until their last breath. So from here I say, this war is pointless.